Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. Today I am joined by Jeremy Brown. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I listen to the show all the time, and now I get to be a part of it.
Awesome. Cool. So to get started, why don't you tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So my name is Jeremy. I live in Orlando. Love it down here. Don't like the winters of Colorado, where I'm from. I so for many years I was a teacher. For 15 years I was a teacher. I during that time discovered the FileMaker platform, where I built school databases for the schools that I was working with. And at 15 years of teaching, I decided I like to do that more because it was challenging. And so I left teaching and went to a development firm to teach or to do the development. Learned a lot in the process. And in just the last 3 months, I decided to go out on my own. During my time learning FileMaker, learning the entire platform, I got to know a lot of people. I learned a lot of great things from people about the platform. And I learned how to, mainly I started to focus on the JavaScript part of the FileMaker platform and that little web viewer object. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with that.
Yeah, well, back in the day.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
it's really advanced since then, I think. And it's Claris has built it so that there's so much you can do with it. And I looked at that and says, you know what? I have really studied the JavaScript, the web viewer. I've studied JavaScript. I've actually taught sessions at their major conferences on this and spoken about it. Rather than working for someone else, I think I'm going to try my own hand at doing a business that is focused just on that web viewer object and one part of a FileMaker app, rather than building the whole thing like you've had other people on this podcast talk about. Rather than building a whole app for a client, I'm really focused on building one little thing, like a calendar or a progress bar or a data table or a chart or a dashboard or what have you.
Hmm.
But that is where I'm at right now. And I have a company called Integrating Magic, and it's really focused on the integration aspect of working in the FileMaker platform.
Interesting. Okay, super duper specialized.
I was going to ask you about that. I think it's about as far niche down as you can go. It's almost like saying, "Hey, I'm going to make a business out of creating portals in FileMaker," or
FileMaker, right?
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. But it is a doorway into a new. The web viewer is a doorway into a different and extremely powerful platform. So
Yes.
it's not like portals exactly, because portals they're just native FileMaker thing. And my former boss, Chris Moyer,
I know him.
always loved doing portal tricks in his magazine articles. We were big fans of portal tricks. Can you build a business on portal tricks? I don't think so. But perhaps you could do something perhaps you could do something specializing in bringing more web into FileMaker. It's at a certain point, it begs the question, or it raises the question, maybe the whole thing should be in the web. But
Yeah.
I know that that's not a realistic, like 99 times out of 100, that's not a realistic approach. Okay, so your clients aren't the end. They must not be the end user. It must be the developers
Yeah.
themselves. So other FileMaker developers.
Right, because here's my whole pitch. I have studied this for quite a few years now. I have a system of building a data table or a calendar that works really quickly, that works efficiently for me. And I know all the ins and outs of it. So my pitch is to the FileMaker developer, hey, you want to solve your client's problem. You know that a calendar or a data table or a dashboard is the way to go. Rather than you handling it, let me handle it for you. This is a week-long engagement at most, other than support after it's deployed. And it's really just me building something then and to them for them, and then handing them the code. And and me helping them put it in their system if they asked for that. But yeah, that's who I'm talking to, is the FileMaker developer who really doesn't have the time to learn how to work with the JavaScript in order to build the solution for his client.
Okay, so I think you said four things: calendars, data tables, dashboards, and was there one other thing?
Progress bars. I mean, there's tons of things. I've built probably 20 in the time that I've started this business.
Mm-hmm.
And it just never ends.
Okay.
I'm always, somebody asked me last week how to convert a PDF into a JPEG and send it back to FileMaker using JavaScript to do that. So it's really all sorts of things.
Okay, so some web services things happening there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that seems, would these be existing web services or stuff that you would build?
Stuff that there's two ways to go about it. I could use a JavaScript library to do what I suggested, turn a PDF into a JPEG and bring it back into FileMaker, or I could engage in an API, a service that's out there, and do that. And I have both competencies. Most of the time, we're interested in building a little bit of a JavaScript. I call them widgets that can be plugged right in without a whole lot of fuss. And there's a ton of JavaScript libraries out there to do pretty much anything that we need to solve problems in FileMaker. And I think that's one of my goals too. I'll tell you just a couple more things about me and my business. I'm really interested in teaching the Claris FileMaker community about JavaScript. I've got a whole community around this where it's just focused on JavaScript and FileMaker, talking about all of the quirks that's involved. There's a lot of quirks with that web viewer object and Windows and Mac and such. So I'm really interested in teaching them. I have an office hours every week. That is part of my business idea, is to teach people, but also then to develop stuff for them.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, and you're preaching to the choir here. I did a very similar thing, but when I was leaving FileMaker, I everything's got pros and cons. I started to get tired of certain limitations, and the web was still relatively new back when I did this. So I was consciously, I think starting in 2003, trying to move into web development directly, and had a couple of years there where a number of my clients were hiring me because they were outgrowing FileMaker and wanted to move over to this new web thing. So I was just doing basic LAMP style development. It wasn't even Web 2.0 stuff. It was like Web 1.0 stuff. But that was direct to client. So what you're doing is inside of the platform itself. So your target market is FileMaker developers. So not just even developers in general, but specifically FileMaker developers.
Yep.
And so that's great, super focused. And what do developers like to spend money on? They generally don't like to spend money on other developers.
That's correct.
Not that they won't, but they're like, well, I can figure this out. I'm smart.
Exactly.
They do love spending money on tools and training. And you just touched on, you just sort of touched in that area around, you have a community, you are a former teacher. You like teaching the community about this. You said you've spoken at the conference or given workshops there. Yeah. So it seems like a natural fit. And I could imagine scenarios where you've got you are the go-to person for scripting the web viewer. Like you're the person. And if anybody ever needs that, then they'll come to you. They'll be in the community. They maybe try and do it themselves. They maybe buy, I don't know how you would productize these widgets for sale, but theoretically there'd be a way to do that. We could brainstorm a couple of ways to do that, but certainly that would be a possibility. And when someone does come along that has a big, huge FileMaker project and it's maybe a multi-year thing and the client's requesting something that FileMaker's just not good at, then maybe you get called in as sort of special forces, like parachute in, make the client happy.
Yep.
And there's like like you said, it's maybe a week or two, not a long project, but and you save the day for X dollars. So you'd say up front, yep, we can, tell me what they're looking to achieve. What do you know about it? And you get the confidence that, yeah, I could deliver that. It'll be 10 grand. I'll let you know when I'm done. And if the value is there, then you'll get a yes. It's pretty straightforward.
and that's the key, because I've been listening to your podcast and talking with people who also listen to you. By the way, I know Chris Moyer pretty well.
Oh, good.
I talk with him at least once a week on the different FileMaker Slacks.
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah,
He's a good
Chris is
guy.
awesome. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. But anyway, so my wonder is, who is my audience that I get the value from? Yes, and here's why. Everything that I hear, I think maybe again, it's my interpretation at this point, is that I want to tell the client, hey, this will save you hundreds of millions of dollars a year or something. It'll save you 50 hours a month if you let JavaScript handle this process rather than FileMaker. That's good, but I'm not actually speaking to the client in most cases, the person who's going to use it. I'm actually speaking to the FileMaker developer. So
Right.
I think I have to switch and then using your 5-page proposal with 3 options, like I'm struggling to find the exact right options to give another FileMaker developer when they come to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it all about just time savings for FileMaker developers? Should I say, hey, this will make you look really good to your clients? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of things going on here. If the first is, let's talk about going direct to clients. So some client has invested $500,000 over the course of 5-10 years in a FileMaker solution that is mission critical for their business, and they want it to do something that they can't seem to get it to do, that is going to unlock some big opportunity for them or cut costs for them or something. It's going to have some kind of value to them. And they might not even have any idea that JavaScript in the web viewer is the solution. So, but if somehow, this is the tricky part, if somehow you came across someone who had a big investment into FileMaker, it was mission critical, and they wanted to do something that they can't feasibly do, and they came across you and you could unlock that for them, then yeah, you could totally value price it. So like I said, the tricky part is, how do you find those people? How do they self-identify? They're not gonna be looking for the web viewer scripting expert, because they don't even know that's a solution. So maybe what they're looking for is some kind of calendar or dashboard or something that that they know they want. They don't know how to get it, and so it's something like, do you need to have executive dashboard for decision-making reasons, baked into your FileMaker solution, and no one can build it, or something like that? Or you just tried and failed to build, a calendar into your FileMaker solution. We should talk, something like that.
Okay.
It seems kind of far-fetched that because it's probably always going to boil down to a feature that is, well, you tell me. It seems like it'll almost always be a nice to have feature and not like a mission critical addition to the system. But if you've got counter examples, then definitely let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. There was certainly one that needed a calendar. They needed to combine data from 2 different tables into one view. So that was actually, I heard from the client and spoke to the client through the FileMaker developer on that. But that's one that was fairly mission critical for them. There are other things where the clients are telling their FileMaker developers, I want this problem solved. It's them speaking to their FileMaker developers. So far, I have not been able to, I don't know where to look, or haven't even thought of going direct to the client and who is making a big investment in FileMaker, because they wouldn't know that they need a calendar, or they wouldn't know that they need a data table done in a different way than what FileMaker can provide. Because you probably remember, list views are pretty awful when it comes to performance, right?
Yeah.
They can complain about that. I guess that would be mission critical if they're scrolling through 1,000 records and it takes forever to load the next batch of 100 or so.
So okay, well, there's a symptom that people would recognize. An actual client would recognize. Like, are you having performance problems in FileMaker list views? Or are you having performance problems scrolling along lists of data in FileMaker? Because, I mean, probably the number one complaint about FileMaker, like FileMaker is amazing for,
Yep.
all the things you get for free. But in exchange for the rapid development, you get, a lot of, it bakes in a lot of problems that aren't necessarily problems if you, on a smaller
Exactly.
scale, they don't become they aren't problems. They become problems once you start to, if you try and put a million records in there, it's, over the WAN, it's like, yikes.
Yep.
At least it used to be.
It's
So
better now, but yeah, I get your point that there's still trade-offs. You can design a million record FileMaker system with no performance problems. You just got to be very careful about what you're
yeah,
doing. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, FileMaker gives us the tools to put calculations, unstored
yeah,
calculations. We can
exactly.
create one. That just grinds the system to a halt, especially if you put that on a list view where
Yeah,
it's seen. So
yeah, exactly. So, okay. So you could be potentially, you could be finding clients by getting yourself in front of people, business owners who have a big investment in FileMaker and are experiencing severe performance problems. Because you
okay.
multiply that out across, 50 to 200, say, employees, all across the United States or maybe even the world, that's a major productivity hit. And it is so frustrating for the users that I would be willing to bet that people, they would be experiencing at least low morale, perhaps even churn, employee churn,
Mhm.
because the system is so slow and painful, and they have to like. I mean, I was there. I was there. Worked when I learned FileMaker. When I first found FileMaker, I was just like you, sort of a power user, subject matter expert, and I was like, I went to IT and I said, somebody get me a database. I need to do some stuff, and they were like, I asked for access, and they were, we don't have that, but we have FileMaker, and I was like, off to the races. And okay, so the client knows when they have a performance problem. The issue with that, if that was like a marketing message that you were projecting into the universe, is that there are probably, you tell me, but there are probably lots of performance problems that you can't help with.
Um, Probably there's quite a few. Yeah. Yes, when you're, I mean, the main point of a database is to view data and to retrieve it and then use it some way. There are points along that path, the normal path of a FileMaker user, of an application user, that I could probably inject what I do into it. Like I said, for a client, I replaced a bunch of portals with a JavaScript web viewer, data
Mm-hmm.
tables that sped up the grabbing of data from all over the system, putting it into the view so that
Mm-hmm.
people could easily scroll through it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an injection point that I definitely have.
Mm-hmm.
There are others, like again, a calendar is not easily built. But again, we're kind of veering into the developer territory there.
Yeah.
So maybe I have to think about that. That's a good point. Like, what other performance issues are there that I could, target at for the clients who are experiencing those performance issues?
Right. Okay, I'm not. Yeah, this is just
Yeah.
brainstorming. I
Yeah.
don't know if this would be a rich territory to mine, but
Okay.
it's an example of a symptom that the FileMaker owner, the
Yep.
client, would absolutely be aware of and not like.
Yeah.
I am aware currently. I work with a lot of FileMaker developers still. I'm aware of current FileMaker customers who are considering complete rewrite in of a huge system, a huge FileMaker system with web technology, strictly because of the performance.
Yep.
So
Okay.
that is a heavy lift. That's
Yep.
a perhaps 500 to $1 million investment to rebuild an entire system for the web. So if you could claim,
Mhm.
maybe you say, having performance problems with your FileMaker solution, considering a rebuild, or don't rebuild before you talk to me.
Uh,
And that's actually kind of a badass headline. So if you were well known for that, and then you could come in and say, okay, what are the worst layouts,
yeah.
or you could potentially even scripts, right? I assume.
Yep. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could be like the you know FileMaker performance guru instead of this horizontal focus, this specialization in like JavaScripting the web viewer. You could kind of like that could just be one of the things or a big thing in your bag of tricks, but you don't really talk about it that much in your marketing because clients don't care. They don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
But they definitely know they have a performance problem. So, you could that would be if you wanted to go down that path, that would be the first one I could think of. I mean, we all know performance is a problem. We all know that there are people with 6 and 7 figures invested in their FileMaker solution. We all know how frustrating it is when the database is running slow. So that could be a point where you can send out a value-based proposal with 3 options that are like, well, I can maybe option 1 is I'll teach you how to fix it, or I'll teach your internal IT people how to fix it. Option 2 is I'll teach them how to fix it, plus I'll oversee them as they're fixing it. And option 3 maybe is, all of those things, plus I will help them. I'll be an extra pair of hands to go in there and fix it with them. So that, that could be an approach. That would it would probably be weird if their FileMaker people were not in-house.
Yep.
Because then it'd be like, that would be a little awkward. But okay,
very awkward.
Yeah, that'd be weird. So yeah, it'd be potentially finger pointing and so forth. So, all right. So putting that aside, because I think that's a little bit more, that's a hard mode, going after, I know that it's difficult to find a list of everybody who we just described, like clients who have a big FileMaker solution that is having performance problems. That's a hard list to find. Okay. So like, now what about this other one where you've already got a lot of traction? It sounds like people can make a big business selling, picks to miners, shovels and picks to miners. So if you are, it sounds like you're super connected in the community. It sounds like you've got a reasonably high profile for doing what you do.
Yep.
Then it would make sense to come up in a more obvious approach would to be really not focusing on value pricing and custom projects, but more so on selling picks and shovels. So, it could be workshops, boot camp, crash course. It could be some kind of tools. It could be like, I don't know how you would do this, but you could sell widgets. Be like, hey, it's X dollars for this calendar widget. Yep. I mean, there's certainly FileMaker plugins. I guess this is a little bit of a different kind of marketplace, but that could be an approach. And you could do something. You could even maybe you go really deep into one of the plugins and build a backend for it that does a particular thing that it isn't done well already or isn't done at all. And then, it's like X dollars per month for this, it's like install this JavaScript in a web viewer and put it on this layout. And the server, your server will, I don't know, turn the PDFs into JPEGs and send them back. And there's some like either, it's a SaaS basically. It'd be like an API, paid API, something like that. Developers buy this stuff like this. They buy training, they buy tools, they buy access to third-party APIs. They don't mind doing that.
Do you think they buy time back? Do they buy efficiency? Do they buy like someone who knows this?
Not if they bill by the hour.
Not if they bill by the hour. Yeah.
Going faster is, why would they pay you for them to go faster if they bill by the hour? So you'd need to find somebody who wasn't billing by the hour.
I don't know how many there are in this community.
Right. Yeah. Why would I pay you $10,000 so I could not bill for 40 hours of work? Right.
Okay. Yeah. The most recent clients I've had are in-house developers who are on a salary and who have a lot of work coming at them.
Yep.
Maybe that's an interesting touch point as well, a place to find people.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Because then I can provide the time. I'm independent. I have this process down, and I've presented about it many times. But I
got street cred.
Yeah, I have street cred, but I can get it done pretty dang quickly. So the last actually few have been just like that. So maybe that's the place to really focus my time and energy.
I like that one because you're going to get, because typically, I don't have a ton of experience with this, but I have some. An in-house developer has a very different attitude about their sort of mastery of the product. There's not like an ego thing happening there where they need to, like a
Mhm.
consultant. They're not going to love the feeling of bringing in a hired hand or a hired gun to do this thing. They it's like an ego hit. Like they want to learn, they want to know how to do it.
Yep.
I feel like those people are the training people.
Yep.
You could train them how to do it. The in-house people sound like would be a fertile market for selling plugins and API access because they're just gonna say, boss, we need to pay. Oh, boss wants feature. All right, I can have that for you tomorrow if you give me, if you'll pay $99 a month to this third party and we'll just plug it right in.
Mhm.
Maybe 90, yeah, whatever. Go ahead. So that would be that seems like a good fit. I mean, these are all hypotheses. Obviously have to validate them, but I thinking through the psychology that makes a lot of sense to me. It's worth looking into.
Yeah. And again, people know who I am. Been around for quite a few years now, and I think I have a pretty okay, pretty good reputation. Not too many people dislike me, but so that's always good. So yeah, so there's a ton of in-house developers in my community. That's how I started. That's how a lot of people start,
Hmm.
and that could be a great place to say, you have so much work to do. Let me handle this part for you.
Yeah.
Let me.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. That's where I was going with the
Yeah.
psychology thing. The in-house developer, they're like, not always, but a lot of them are just like they just want to leave at 5. Like in the bus, it's more they do good work and more work shows up on their desk. It's like, ugh, the bloom is off the rose. Like it's not fun to stay until 10 working out some complex whatever recursive function or something. It's just like, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, and the boss doesn't usually, not always, but usually the boss doesn't really care how it gets done. They just want it done because they need to report back to their boss, like, yes, it's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
The calendar thing works. Great. We're making progress. So if that's something that they can just buy, they're very likely, I think of the group of people that we've talked about, they're the most likely to do it, to be aware of it and do it.
That's interesting. I'm glad you're bringing this up because as I think of my clients over the past 3 months, those are the ones that I've had the most success with getting a proposal across is the in-house developer who is not billing hourly, who is there just with piles of work to do, and they know that I'm around and I have the bandwidth to take on something that fits into my wheelhouse, whether
Hmm.
it is an API or whether it is a JavaScript thing. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. They could be. I think those would potentially be a good, maybe a close second in terms of target for training. Because some of those folks will have aspirations to go solo at some point, and they will be interested more than most about sort of improving their toolkit and the stuff that's portable when they leave, the stuff that comes with them. So getting their employer to pay for training could be could be a thing. So I think the in-house and independent FileMaker developers would potentially be interested in training. Probably the in-house people would be more interested in just buying some kind of widget or API access from you than the external developers. And then if you had a reputation for, so let's say you do some of this stuff, right? So you do it, you start getting testimonials from developers about how amazing the performance is after implementing your ideas. And then maybe you can go after this third market of direct to client, people who have the really expensive FileMaker systems, and you've got all these testimonials. They're from developers, but they're about performance gains. And the owners of the business who have a bunch of grumbling employees that are just like, oh, the system's so slow, somebody reboot the server again, then maybe that becomes maybe it's not a constant stream of consulting work, but maybe you get one or two whales a year that come
Yeah.
along and like, hey, we heard that you wave some magic wand and like the performance gets better. And you say, yeah, sometimes it depends on the nature of the problem, but if if you wanted to take a look at it, it'd be $5,000, and I can tell you where the bottlenecks are, and if I can't fix them, who can? And they'll say, okay, great, here's $5,000. And then you go in, look at the system, and you're like, oh, but I can do this. And then you give them a proposal for, 3 different ways that they could mitigate the performance issues. Maybe
Okay.
it would be, I think all of these things would be aligned. On the one hand, you're selling tools, but the tools are for something, and they produce a, a business outcome that is desirable. So you could, if you were getting testimonials about performance increases, then you could kind of talk about that in business circles, when you're talking to potential business owners, not FileMaker developers. So it could all align.
Would I know you don't like hourly, and that's what this whole podcast is about. But if I do want to include those people who do hourly work, are those people? Would
As
you
customers.
recommend as customers?
Yeah. Okay.
Would you recommend I don't even go for that market, or I could bend the rules for those people and play their game and bill hourly rather than on a value flat fee kind of thing?
Yeah, that's basically the agency model and the agency model doesn't play nice with value pricing for sure, because who you really want to talk to is the end client, but you can't really, you're just a part of the overall thing. And so if the exception to this would be if and they do exist. I know at least 2 off the top of my head, FileMaker firms that do value-based pricing. So in theory, you could, make your services known to them, and they might come to you and say, hey, we've got this problem. We know you're the person to solve it. Can you do it for $5,000? Because they're getting a flat fee for the whole project, and they want to make the problem go away as fast as possible, because every hour they work is money they lose, not money they make. So it's not impossible, but there are not a lot of them.
Okay.
What I would do for those folks, if you needed the cash flow and you had maybe 1 or 2 dev shops that you worked with on this basis, and you get it's good money or whatever, then for cash flow reasons, I would maybe continue to do that while I was building up the other parts of the business. So you can keep the lights on, but I would view it as a stopgap measure, and something that you wouldn't try and make more efficient or better, or, even make it difficult to do a quote. You wouldn't even try. It'd just be like, they'd say, what's your hourly rate? You'd say whatever it is. They'd be like, great. How many hours do you think it'll be? You're like, I don't know. It's never taken me more than 2 weeks. So they'll say, all right, whatever. Start the meter. We'll start paying you. But the trick with that is, when you are working by the hour, there's a tendency to overwork and spend all of your time on client work, because that's how you get more money. And if you want more money, you need to work more hours. There's no way around it. So what's tricky about it is, and they're probably also in a hurry. So what's tricky about it is limiting the number of hours per week you are billing for. I would try and limit it to 20 at a maximum, which would, if you work a 40-hour week, would give you 20 hours to build up these other parts of the business, and then just always be trying to get that number lower and lower and lower until you don't need the money anymore.
All right. That's good advice. I do have a few clients like that are just old clients that I've had for quite a few years that, I'm still doing work for them. They have me on sort of a retainer, and I do work. And, but you're right. It does like I am. Last week, I was trying really hard to get this training going, because I do have a training piece going. Actually, it'll start next week. I just put it out there in my community, and hopefully, it'll be a good start. I'm starting to ramp up the training. I've done this for one developer shop here in the FileMaker community, and they really like what I'm doing with them. So I'm going to expand it to the wider audience as a test run to see if it's good. So I do need to, you're right, I do need to lower that billable ratio so that I'm focused on the stuff that for me I enjoy and is part of my mission. My mission is not to bill hourly. It's to help people learn how to work with JavaScript in FileMaker, because I know it sounds like you kind of stay sort of current. You have your ear towards the Claris FileMaker platform a little bit. Is that right? Or
it's sort of not from the horse's mouth, but just from working with folks who are still playing with FileMaker. Yeah, I haven't touched it since like 9.
Yeah. Well, with its, 2 or 3 times a year release now, there's always new features added. And JavaScript is just, I have been evangelizing this for many years now, along with other people that I work with. There's just almost no excuse to not dabble in JavaScript now because it is such a powerful part of the platform. You can do anything with JavaScript that we couldn't do with FileMaker. So that's my position on that. And I'm trying to, spread the word as much as possible by speaking, by doing office hours every week and starting up a training here.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's a great excuse for any kind of developer who wants to have better tools and feel more powerful, like that feeling of like I can do anything.
yeah,
With these tools. They're amazing. Anybody that wants to build up their toolbox, it's a compelling proposition. It's not like you're talking about learning how to do Flash, right? I mean, JavaScript's kind of a big deal.
yeah,
So, and a lot of people, FileMaker's been around for, I don't know, 40 years. So like, it's not, I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's growing or whatever, but there's a lot of, the landscape is quite a bit different than it was 40 years ago or even 20 years ago when I was doing it. So I would imagine that there's a healthy segment of FileMaker developers who, if they had a good excuse, a useful application for learning JavaScript, that it'd be fairly attractive, because it's like, what if I don't want to do FileMaker forever? What if Claris, doesn't grow? What if they kill FileMaker? What if they go to something else? Then what? Am I just going to be a dinosaur who knows how to do Flash development essentially?
yeah.
So like, I don't think any of those things are going to happen, but there's a really strong argument for having JavaScript in your toolkit. I mean, come on.
There is, yeah. And I know people left and right in the FileMaker community that are looking at JavaScript to explore as a backup alternative. My focus has been, I'm a pretty good FileMaker developer. I'm pretty good at the JavaScript stuff. I don't know everything about JavaScript, but I know exactly what I need to know to make it work in FileMaker. So that's always been my perspective on this is here's the stuff that you as a FileMaker developer can learn and really do some great things right away in your apps for your customers. So I think that's an interesting perspective to spread out there. And it seems to be spreading a little bit here and there. So I do need to focus on the training more and really get that going. All right.
Yeah. I mean, so like it sounds like you started on a training idea. Like, where are you with the idea? So what's that scenario right now?
So I have a community of people. It's on the Circle platform. We gather once a week I do some office hours with whoever shows up and just to talk about what I'm working on and show some JavaScript skills, give away repositories that are good starters.
Cool.
Yeah. And, but my training has been, it's all about how to work with JavaScript within the FileMaker platform using FileMaker scripting and such to communicate with the JavaScript that's in the web viewer. So FileMaker 19 is what we're on now. I think I heard you asking about that in a recent episode. Where FileMaker 19 removed most of the problems, so we can communicate directly with the JavaScript inside a web viewer. So my training is all centered around that. And because as a FileMaker developer, we're not really using JavaScript to build something from scratch. We're most likely taking a JavaScript library and applying it to our data, like a data table or a chart. This training is all about how to work with those libraries, the common patterns, the common quirks, the connection again between FileMaker and such. So, but I don't teach everything about JavaScript, but I teach what we need to know in the context of FileMaker.
Yeah, I actually love this because it's niche, but it has a buyer built in, right? It's not like it's not just like you're like, oh, I'm an expert at indexing MySQL tables that have 1 billion records. It's because it's like there's no like obvious buyer there. But if you're like JavaScript for FileMaker developers, it's like,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I have to imagine there's not a, I mean, there's loads, millions and probably millions, literally millions of websites about getting better at JavaScript,
Uh-huh.
but none of them apply directly to FileMaker or close to none.
Yep.
So I would imagine it was exactly like this back when I was doing it. I positioned myself as like the PHP for FileMaker guy, like
Oh.
PHP for FileMaker developers, and I had people still people still email me. Do you still have that file that you did from 2004? That it was like a PHP to FileMaker comparison chart. And on the left-hand side, I would have like the syntax for a FileMaker calculation. And on
Yep.
the right-hand side, be the exact same thing in PHP.
Yep.
And that was extremely popular because people were like, "Oh, I totally know how to do that," and I can see the minor differences over there. Like I have to have a semicolon or whatever,
Mhm.
or the comparison operators are different, or but we get it. Like so, all of a sudden they would look at this and be like, "Oh, I kind of know PHP. It's
Yep.
not that different." So
I-
yeah,
It's funny. I must have not seen that, but I've definitely followed in your footsteps on that because my whole thing is JavaScript for FileMaker developers.
hmm
I actually created a FileMaker file that does exactly what you're talking about. It has the FileMaker function or calculation or script pattern that we
hmm
might follow,
right,
and then the JavaScript equivalent.
perfect, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, JavaScript is huge. FileMaker is, it's not gonna take over the world at this point. I think we know that. So, there's probably a lot of people who would look for any excuse to learn a growing or more popular technology,
Yeah.
but they might need to justify it or rationalize it by saying, "Well, I can use this in my day-to-day work." So I'm not just like I don't know, learning React or something, and I'm gonna start doing React instead of FileMaker. It's like it's immediately applicable in their day to day, but also it gives them a path to a whole new world,
Yep.
potentially a whole new world. And you're super differentiated in the JavaScript space because there's like Wes Bos, a very well known JavaScript educator, but he's not going to teach you anything about FileMaker, like
Yep.
how to pass data from FileMaker into a web view, right?
Right. Right.
So like all of those little nuances and tricks and landmines that you're well aware of are that's where the money is because people can
Yeah.
learn JavaScript anywhere, but not how to do it
Exactly.
in FileMaker.
And most of those courses skip over libraries, skip over working with C3 or Apex charts or something, and
hmm
that takes a skill in of itself to understand how these work and the quirks around them and such. So,
hmm
and that's 95% of what I do is adapt a library for the data that I want to present.
Cool.
Um, so
What's C3?
C3 is a JavaScript library, charting library that it's sort of a layer on top of the D3
Okay.
really complex library.
Yep.
It just makes it a little bit more accessible, and it's a good one for people, FileMaker developers who are dabbling and want to build a chart for
Yep.
their system.
Yep.
Um, I want to put myself out of a job. I would, by training everybody in the community to work with JavaScript so that they don't have to hire me to do that to
hmm
build them widgets. But on the other hand, and I want to ask you about this in-house developer.
hmm
So recently I finished a project for a client. He attended my office hours. He saw a data tables demonstration that I did. He took my starter repository that I made that I demonstrated how to put this into your own file. And he just said, "Hey, Jeremy, I just don't have the time. I want to just build this for me."
Right.
Yes, I could do it. It would take me a lot longer. You've got it. You can do it.
hmm
Right. Is that the only thing that I need to say to people is to that in-house developer? Hey, I'm here to save you time. Do I need to provide a bunch of options and get to the why and all this
No,
stuff?
no, 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 no. So
Yeah.
the value conversation is only for the why conversation and value pricing is really only for custom projects. And for me, it's too much work to have the why conversation and a sales interview and all of that stuff for something that's going to be like less than 50 grand.
Okay.
So
That's where I'm at.
yeah, so it's just like give them a price,
Okay.
just, it just be like, maybe you could give them three options, but I wouldn't go through the whole value pricing and whatnot. It's like, I would just do, ideally you would have productized services or products that, that are just priced in advance. And you could say like, so you wouldn't even have to think about it and you
Yeah.
wouldn't even have to discuss it. You'd just be like,
Yep.
yeah, here's a link. You can buy it now. It's whatever. It's $5,000 and I'll implement, like maybe you sell a plugin or something. It's $50 or it's $500. Say $500. You can buy the plugin, or maybe I don't know how complicated it is. Let's do a little product ladder here. For 50
Yeah.
bucks, you can buy the widget. For $500, you can take the course on how to install the widget and get it all set up. And for $5,000, I'll do it for you.
Okay.
So, and that could just be the thing. And so somebody who has more money than time, which is the person you're talking about, can just look at that and decide, well, do I really want to spend 5 grand, or should I just take the course, spend 500, take the course and do it myself? So if you just had a kind of like a menu, a product
Yeah.
ladder of these offerings, it takes all of the complexity of the sales process away. It makes the marketing way easier. But maybe
Yeah.
you'll leave some money on the table. Maybe you could have gotten 10,000 out of them, but in exchange for not having to do all of the sales effort and value conversation and all of that, then that's the trade-off.
That's interesting. I actually, as I was dreaming about this last September, October, before I decided in the 1st of December, I was thinking of this product ladder idea. I was kind of thinking of it as, okay, let's just take a particular widget, like a data table or a chart. And based on the complexity of what they need, I could build up the prices from there. The level one is just here's the chart. You're going to provide me the data as it's supposed to be, and I'll put in the options that you want, and we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Another rung on that ladder would be, okay, well, there's some custom work that I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to take your raw data and I'm going to have to transform it into what the charting library needs. So it's going to be more work. That's a different level of pricing. And then there's a whole other level where, people like data to be automatically refreshed once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
That can be challenging in this realm. So that would be a whole different pricing rung on the ladder as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that might be too confusing. I don't know. Maybe yours is much more simple.
I mean, I think of it as like, it depends on, I mean, really what this boils down to is what kind of business you want to have. Because you could just say, I don't do that.
Yeah.
Just be like, that's a distraction. It's not part of my strategy. My strategy is I'm building a training business or a products and training business or, membership based business. It's kind of just what kind of business model do you really want to have? Like, what are you going toward?
Okay.
If you're going away from implementation, then I would probably just say, I would just have a lot of constraints around the installation piece. So if it's $50 for the widget, here you go, good luck. $500 for a course to teach you how to do it, and $5,000 for an installation. Then the requirements on the sales page would be like, your data needs to be presented in this form. You need to transform your data into this format. Once it's like that, then give me a call.
Okay.
And just say like, no auto refresh, no this, no that, no the other, whatever scope you need to remove to make the price make sense for you, so that it feels like you're still making really good money. Like maybe in 5 hours you can make $5,000. So, if you need to that's the beauty of a productized service, is it has like a package. There's like a label. It's got a name. It's got benefits to the user. If you flip it over and look at the fine print, it's got all of the ingredients and the indications and the prescription and all that stuff. Usage instructions. But it's all there that would be all on the sales page in that order. It would be like name, benefits, buy now, and and then get into like the more ingredient stuff from the back label farther down. And down there you'd say stuff like, look, this isn't going to auto refresh, But if you take the course, you'll learn how to build that yourself. It really depends on what kind of business you're trying to build.
What a course in your model is 10 times cheaper than just buying my time to do it. I have to develop that course once.
Mm-hmm.
Is it an hours long thing? Is it just a straight walkthrough of here's how you implement it, and that's it? 40 minutes of a screen recording.
So in general, the way I talk about a product ladder is that you want to have the rungs starting out. You want to have a rung at each order of magnitude. So,
Okay.
you might start at $5, you might start at $5,000. It depends on what you do. But if you're going to start at 50 for a widget, and I'm just totally spitballing, I have no idea
Sure.
if that's the right price, but you'd want to have something at each one of those price points. So let's say your first rung is 50. Then you're like, okay, what could I do for 500 that would be a no-brainer? And then reverse engineer what the product is to fit there. So, I depends on the demand. Like, what do people want? What would be worth trading $500 for? So, maybe usually what it looks like would be a longer course than just like a 40-minute installation video.
Okay.
Usually it would be more like a few hours, and like longer doesn't necessarily mean better, because that's just more time they have to spend to consume it. So if it's super focused on a particular thing and it's like a no-brainer deal, you just reverse engineer the product to make it a no-brainer at $500 for the people that you're trying to sell to. And how do you find that out? You find that out by talking to people and experimenting.
I totally could see that. I could see myself creating a series of videos that says, here's how you take my implementation of the C3 library and work with it for your system. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but one of the things that I've developed over my time working with people in this community is that the connection between FileMaker and JavaScript has been really good, but writing JavaScript for FileMaker is really tough. There's no good way to do it. I used to write code in fields in a FileMaker field and have the web viewer read that field. Well, I've developed this whole environment, I call it, where I have VS Code on the right and FileMaker on the left, and anything that I'm writing in VS Code shows up in the web viewer automatically. And then when I'm ready to deploy, I run one script inside of VS Code, and it passes all of the inline code to FileMaker and
Killer.
Places it. Yeah,
That's really cool.
So what you're suggesting is people could buy that package, that repository of mine that I've set up for data tables or C3 for $50. Easy. It's the work that I put into getting it perfect and making it work. So yeah, you can pick up a copy of the repo.
Yep.
For $500, as an example, I can walk you through using my environment thing and setting up the library perfectly and working with your data. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think that's very doable. And then I build it one time and I have the video to give out multiple times, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I don't have to make a custom video per client because it is a product. It's a product course.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. I might make for $5,000. I might make a video to sort of hand it off, like, in the future, if you ever need to change anything, here's where to look, or something like that, just to keep them off my back with small, simple support questions. But that would be like a half an hour, probably, not even more of like a knowledge base kind of thing.
That's an interesting idea. And then I could fill my website with here are the implementations that I have for you. As a FileMaker developer, they already know what they need. They need something to render data faster than what a list view can do with calculated fields. I have a client who just asked me to build a data table for them for archive data. They deleted a bunch of records after storing it in JSON in a field. And they're asking me to build a widget to display that archived data so they can still get to it, but just look at it, Yeah,
read only.
Yeah, read only. So that they already know what they want. So my website could just be, here's a data table product. Here's the ladder. Here's a chart product ladder. Here's PDF to JPEG ladder kind of things, and build all those up and make them available on my website. And then
Right.
with a
So
buy button,
yeah, so you'd have a whole category of widgets, a whole category of courses, a whole category of like, well, I guess installation would be installation, but yeah, you could certainly do that. I would start though with the most popular one and build the whole ladder versus building a whole bunch of rungs.
like, yeah,
If you know what I mean.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
like $50 rungs. So I'd pick the most popular one. Maybe it's calendar, maybe it's whatever you think it is, and start there and build up from there, and then have each one of those could potentially be the same structure. Now
That's
I have a
what I do.
cool. Could you sell some sort of FMPJS plugin for VS Code? Like how is that implemented?
Um, it's just a script that runs in the node environment that does the inlining of the code. It's using parcel.js to bundle up the code. So I mean, it's nothing that I've put together. In fact, I've gleaned this environment from others. I've taken bits and pieces from other people. I'm not sure if I could do a plugin. I don't know anything about plugins for VS Code. So that's an interesting, maybe it would be really cool, like you were saying, to have a button on the VS Code interface that says deploy to my FileMaker file, and it clicks it and it does its thing. So I have to look at that. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. Or just spitballing here, like type in a FileMaker calculation, it converts it to JavaScript or something, or like, almost like no, this is insane. This is an insane idea. I was thinking of like a preprocessor, kind of like what like Webpack does or something.
Yeah.
Where you just write FileMaker calculations and it figures it out in the Mac. But that's insane.
It's not horribly insane, because there are free tools and paid tools out there that build FileMaker scripts from XML in this case. So there's a lot of
changed.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It is using a plugin, but you can inject script steps into, it's a copy paste thing where it copies to your clipboard and then you have to physically paste it into a script. But
okay.
Interesting. You're giving me a lot of ideas, and I like this idea, because I was struggling with writing a 5-page proposal for just building a dang archive data viewer. It felt overkill to do that. I'm the king of overkill sometimes. But it felt overkill to do that, but you've given me a much simpler route.
Cool.
So.
Yeah. A lot of people think of me, like associate me with value pricing, but I'm the ditching hourly guy. And there's like a bunch of ways to ditch hourly. Value pricing is really only, in theory, you could do it, but as you're pointing out, it's a pain, and it's almost like more work than the work. So if the work is so small. So it's like, for me, it's like if I feel like there's maybe 50 grand on the table, then I'll get into like a sales interview, the why conversation, and all of that. But it's just not worth anyone's time to if we're probably talking about 5 grand or even 25 grand, it's like, yeah, just like 25 grand, let's just figure it out and it'll be fine. But as long as there's no hours involved, I'm cool with it, because then it puts all of the it aligns all the financial incentives so that both parties are happier the faster it's completed at a high quality or an appropriate level of quality. So however you come to that number doesn't matter to me, as long as it's high enough to cover your costs. But I do think if someone wants to swing for the fences and get into like 6 and 7 figure range, and they're attracting big clients that have deep pockets, value pricing is definitely the way to go.
Okay.
Because otherwise you're probably going to price yourself way too low. But when you get down to people who have small pockets, it starts to not matter, because the number you would have plucked out of thin air is the same that you would have gotten from value pricing. So what's the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish we had talked a couple months ago, because I lost a client because I had this elaborate proposal thing, and he said, I just can't justify the cost. And I wish I had given him this ladder to say, here, I can get you started for $50. I can train you via course by 500, or you can buy my work for the 5,000. So that's okay. I mean, I'll I'll go to the next one. And this will, this not only will I be able to reach out to people and say, or if they contact me, I can say, yep, here's my ladder, pick one. It's a 5-second conversation over Slack.
Exactly.
Rather than a 30-minute interview and all this stuff. But people can also find this on my website and say, I'm going to buy this because I need this right now. And I'm just going to have Jeremy do it. So maybe I'll get more of those and not regret the client that I missed out on.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always more clients, right? More fish in the sea.
I hope so, man. It's really nice to have my own business and, go to Disney when I want, but it's you got to keep thinking, okay, where's the revenue coming from this month?
Yeah. Yep. Risk reward.
Yeah. No one tells you that that's the case. No one tells you that business is thinking about revenue streams all the time. At least I don't hear that.
It's funny because you go, not to go down a rabbit hole on it, but it's a different craft. Like you know JavaScript in FileMaker, or FileMaker, or someone listening to this knows React or whatever, and that's what Michael Gerber would call a technician. And when they are inside of a business, it's fairly invisible. When they're an employee, it's fairly invisible to them what anybody farther up the food chain even does. Like, aren't they just basically taking my money? Like why am I even splitting? I'm the only one that matters here. If it wasn't for me, none of this stuff would get built. And because all of the stuff that they do that's really hard and important is invisible. Work shows up on your desk on Monday and you do it, and Friday you go home. When you go solo, you have started a business, whether you know it or not. And even a freelancer is a business owner, and there's a craft to building a business the same exact way there's a craft to building a website or a FileMaker database or shooting professional photography. There's a craft to it. And the output is the business. It should be like, it's like an engine, a money creating engine or a value creation engine where you capture some of the value as money. So there's a lot to learn. It's just as much to learn, maybe more than there is about FileMaker.
Yeah, this is keeping me on my toes, but I'm never one to be satisfied with what I'm learning. I quit teaching at the height of what I was doing, and when I was doing it really well, and went into something new and learned how to build databases with other people in a big consulting firm. So I'm always learning something new, always challenging myself here. So
fun.
Throwing myself into the deep end.
Fun.
Well, this is great, Jonathan. Thank you for your time. Got a lot of good advice.
Good. All right. Well, maybe someone listening needs JavaScript in their web viewer.
Yes.
Where should they go to find out more about what you're doing? Maybe buy a widget, go into your community. Where's the best place?
So my website is integratingmagic.io, one word, obviously. And you can schedule a chat right there with me on the front page, something I learned in another person's course. My community is called, it's community.jsinfm.com. And that's where I do office hours every Wednesday. And as of March 28th, I've got a bunch of courses running throughout the next 2 months up until the 1st of June. So I would love for more people to come and learn about JavaScript and become an expert in it in FileMaker.
Yeah, it's fun. The freedom the freedom of it is just amazing. Yeah, yes. It's intimidating also to get started because you're like, oh, I know FileMaker. I don't want to, you got to get out of your comfort zone. But man, the sky's the limit once you get over that barrier into JavaScript. It's amazing.
Yes. And one more, my email is jeremy@integratingmagic.io. If you want to drop me something, I'll be glad to chat with you. But thank you, Jonathan. This is really good. And it gives me lots of good inspiration for fine-tuning my business and the ratio of time I need to spend on things here in my given workday. So thank you.
You're welcome. Glad to hear it. All right, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time for Ditching Hourly. Bye.